Chris Mannix, NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network. Listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. Download the NBC Sports Radio mobile app today. Welcome back, Chris. We got Sixers and Celtics tonight, so we get a chance to talk on the 2 days that those guys have played. And this Celtics team is kind of taking it, to me, I want to get your take on, do you think now, with all the stuff that's going on in Cleveland and Toronto, we kind of know who they are, do you think Boston is now the favorite in the East?
Well, look, I've been writing that Boston's a favorite since mid-November. I wrote a column after the Golden State win for the Celtics, and I've stood by that Boston is the better team right now. I mean, look, none of what Cleveland's going through right now is surprising. I mean, what they were doing in December, I said at the time, a lot of it was smoke and mirrors. They were playing a brutal schedule, and I'm brutal by I mean bad. The teams they were playing were terrible. And some of them they were barely beating. I mean, it was LeBron pulling their fat out of the fire against Memphis. LeBron having to score, I think, the last 7 points against Sacramento. I mean, they were just having these very tough wins against really bad teams. The defense, even though it was improving, was still not very good. Now they get Isaiah Thomas back, and look, I still think Isaiah Thomas is going to come around offensively. I'm not worried about him rediscovering his offensive game over the next few months. But Isaiah doesn't make them any better defensively. In fact, you can make a strong argument he makes them measurably worse.
Right.
Isaiah's presence out there, it was great for Boston because he was a one-man band on the offensive end of the floor. Defensively, though, he's such a liability that the Cavs may not be able to play him in the fourth quarter of playoff games. So I think their problems are so legitimate that they have to make a trade, but they're not going to get out of the Eastern Conference.
And I wanted, because you saw Isaiah a lot, and there's a lot of people who think, man, he could be a product of how good of a coach Brad Stevens is, that he recognized, hey, just give this guy almost like Larry Brown with Iverson, give this guy the ball and let him do whatever the heck he wants and have the other guys just kind of work hard around him. And now that he's kind of the second banana in Cleveland, that he might not have the same impact.
No, it's less about being the second banana and more like style of play. I mean, in Boston, it was, when Isaiah wasn't on the floor, they didn't score. And when he was, while it was a motion-based offense, there were plenty of times when Isaiah had it going where it was just high screen and roll, let Isaiah go operate. And that's not how it works in Cleveland. Everything plays off of LeBron James. And Isaiah, even though he's going to get plenty of minutes with the second unit, plenty of time when LeBron's off the floor, he has got to adjust, especially late in games, with being kind of a spot-up shooter, with being a wing shooter, so, being put in positions that he hasn't been for the last 3 years. That's difficult. It really is. So I don't think that I do think he's going to get his offensive rhythm back, but how quickly he can adjust to being in that type of role is going to be really interesting to see for Cleveland.
Yeah, Sixers Celtics tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers are 20-20. No Redick, this Fultz story, which is kind of turned bizarre. We talk a lot about where they are, and you said they're about right where they should be, but the win they had against Toronto the other day, that's a game, Chris, that they've been losing. They're up 18, they blow the lead, and then they give it up. And it was finally kind of like a growing up moment that they held off the Raptors. And right when you get they've won 5 out of 6, you get some feel-good feels about them. They lose Redick. This Fultz thing's kind of hanging over their head. It seems that, they're constantly having something going on. So if you're Brian Colangelo and you're looking at your roster, what are you thinking towards the deadline? I mean, are you trying to tweak this thing, or are you just letting it ride out and saying, look, we're just still kind of cruising along with what we got?
No, I do zero. I do nothing. I have electrodes attached to me that if I reach for the phone to dial somebody to make a short-term deal, they zap me at that point. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, we've talked about this before, but, Philadelphia, to even just make the playoffs or be in the mix is a huge step in the right direction. And the idea that you'd make any type of move that breaks up the core of your team or gives away draft picks that could be vital to you in the future for a player that isn't a part of that long-term future just doesn't make any sense. I mean, they've got to continue to focus on the development of Ben Simmons, who's only going to get better as his shot stretches out a little bit. Continue to work with Embiid on getting him, fully healthy to play, every game of a season. And work with Fultz. I mean, Fultz is the biggest question mark right now. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on with him. At this point, I mean, stories change by the day, but there's going to be like some kind of opus written at some point about what's going on with that jump shot because the video of it is terrible. I mean, somebody made the comparison. He's shooting like Chuck Hayes. He kind of is with that push shot that's starting from his lower body and just sort of extending with a hitch all the way up. I mean, that's a real problem. I mean, Brett Brown was, he nailed it with what he said. Like, we're not worried about Markel's pain. It's sort of worried about him making a shot. And whatever's going on with him right now, that's got to be a priority for the Sixers to fix. Maybe it doesn't even happen this season. And look, that'd be disappointing to a lot of people, but they've got to get that jump shot right before they can bring him back into the fold.
Yeah, I know you said a lot of people, nobody really knows what's going on here, but why would the team allow that video to get out there? It's almost like they want to show the fans.
That was more of, I mean, that was more of like an iPhone video. Somebody took it and while he was working out. I mean, that was a couple of videos that I saw anyway that showed that shot, and there's really nothing you can do about that.
Chris Mannix is with us here because Mark Jackson, who does the pre and post game here, he thinks that the Sixers deliberately are allowing that video to get out so that they can kind of say, hey, look, we want to play the kid, but his shot looks like this, and we can't do it. There's just a lot of it's Philly, Chris. There's a lot of conspiracy theories going on around injuries here.
Yeah, I mean, they've been dealing with plenty of them, but I don't know that would be one of them. I mean, unless you want to, like, have this guy work out, late at night at gyms far away from the media. I don't really know what the upside is. I mean, look, it sheds light on what's happening with him, no question. It certainly stirs the debate a little bit, but that seems to be one conspiracy theory a little bit too far.
All right, halfway through the season for just about every team, has anybody inched closer to Golden State, or are they still a runaway favorite?
I mean, Houston to me is the wild card, especially with Kawhi Leonard's injury. And I'll be interested to see what the Rockets do over the next couple of months as they get healthy once again. James Harden coming back, Luka Mute at some point coming back. I mean, they at one point they were a top 10 defensive team. And if Houston goes into the playoffs playing like a top 10 defensive team, they're scary because of the offensive firepower they have at the guard spots. But I'm still reluctant to make any kind of prediction that anybody beats Golden State 4 out of 7. I mean, the Warriors right now are in cruise control. I mean, Steph Curry's missed some time. Yeah, but Kevin Durant is playing like a candidate for not just MVP, but Defensive Player of the Year as well. And that's a scary sight to have them out there. They're just kind of cruising along, and they're still playing great basketball. I just don't see a team being able to take 4 out of 7 games against them in a series.
Yeah, and the West doesn't seem as deep this year. I mean, it seems like a drop-off after, 3, right? I mean, Minnesota's number 4, and they're the new kids on the block. It seems that there's in past years you had a much deeper West, so even the road to get out of the West is going to be a little easier for Golden State.
Timberwolves, though, are a wild card in all this. If that's a second-round matchup for Golden State, the way that the Wolves play offensively, and I wrote about the Wolves a little bit today, their defense has improved significantly over the last month, and if they can get that defense in the middle of the pack type of range, they could be a threat. But no, I mean, either way, I mean, you're not looking at a team that could probably take more than 2 games off Golden State.
All right, Chris Mannix, NBC Sports Radio. Last one, Chris, in the East. You said Boston's the favorite, but how many teams in the East do you think could even challenge Boston, or is it a 1 or 2 team race even in the East?
No, I think there are tough matchups in the East. I think the East playoffs are going to be stronger than they've been in any time in the last 4 or 5 years. We know what Milwaukee is after getting Bledsoe. They're going to get Jabari Parker back at some point very soon, and that's going to add a piece to their offensive puzzle. What do they look like when all those guys have come together? I'm very interested to see what Boston does. Of course, when Gordon Hayward maybe comes back at the end of the year, if that's still a possibility, what they do with their disabled player exception. And Toronto is a big wild card. I mean, on national TV, they punked the Cavaliers, and this is not the same Toronto team. They play different offensively, as people that have watched seen. They're more up tempo. They emphasize ball movement more. If that offense translates to the playoffs, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get to the playoffs, you revert back to what you know, and that's isolation basketball. But if they're playing a more up tempo, free flowing style, they're going to be dangerous to every team. So I think once we get to the second round of the playoffs, it's going to be a lot of really tough series. And
DeRozan's added more of a three-pointer to his game than years past. Chris Mannix, listen to him on NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network. Listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. Thanks, Chris.
You got it.